Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I think we're going to give it probably just a couple more seconds to allow people to join the meeting. And maybe while we do that, I'll just point out the chat feature in the meeting. And certainly as we go through, feel free to pop in any questions into the chat, and we'll be addressing those later in the meeting. And if you want to pop in, a hello or where you're located to start with, we'd love to see that. Oh, it looks like the chat feature is disabled. Can someone on the forum team have a look at that?
Yeah, it's just there. If everyone wants to use the Q&A button, then that'll give you the same functionality, and we'll answer those from there. No, all good, all good.
All right. Shall we jump in? Okay. So, first of all, hello everyone. I'm Kirsten Koppang Telford. I am the CEO of the forum, and my pronouns are she, her. I live and work on the land of the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations, also known as the Deep Cove community of North Vancouver, British Columbia. So for those of you who are new to the forum, let me just take a moment to introduce us. Over the last 22 years, we have boldly supported the growth and development of Canadian women, non-binary, and trans femme entrepreneurs. We've had over 15,000 entrepreneurs take part in our educational and mentorship programs, building a stronger, more diverse, and thriving business community for us all. Our mission is to support entrepreneurs like you to access the resources and community you need to thrive in business in ways that align to your values and goals. And the forum pitch, now the Odlum Brown forum pitch, is one tremendously powerful way to do that. So we are thrilled to have Odlum Brown back as our title sponsor once again this year. The Odlum Brown forum pitch is designed to help connect women entrepreneurs to funding opportunities. The program continues to evolve to more explicitly help women entrepreneurs harness both the intangible and tangible types of capital that lead to thriving businesses. I'm here today to share more about the program itself. And as I said, please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Should have read that before I started at the beginning. And the team and I'll do our best to answer your questions. But before we get to the details, I would like to introduce Connie Stacey, founder and CTO of Grengine, who formerly known as Growing Greener Innovations. And Connie was the 2020-21 pitch winner. Connie, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here. I'm actually back to being the CEO again. I thought I'd get to focus on the tech, but I've rolled back into being the CEO again as well.
Wonderful. And that's sort of the way it goes, right? As a founder, you take on all the jobs at various times.
Absolutely.
So before we go into the pitch experience and the journey that you've been on since, please tell us, Connie, a little bit about Grengine.
Sure. So for those who might have caught us back in the day, we were formerly known as Growing Greener Innovations. and the product was called Grengine, which is just green engine smash. But everybody remembered Grengine, and nobody can remember Growing Green Innovations. So
it is
we
a
did
great
a little
name.
swap, and we changed. I really like when I travel to countries where they roll the R's because they say Grengine, and it just sounds awesome when they do that. So we're a battery manufacturing company. In particular, we typically manufacture lithium-ion batteries. And where our technology is really quite unique is in its ability to tackle things like remote and temporary power in particular. So when I set out and I had the original idea back in 2013, I kind of wanted to find a way to make renewables accessible in places like northern communities, indigenous communities where infrastructure is less than ideal, replace diesel generators for construction sites and things like that. And when I kind of dove into it, what I really found was batteries were one of the biggest technology pieces that made it inaccessible. They're really quite complicated. The amount of engineering that goes into a battery system is significant. Even when it seems simple, it's really not. So I kind of dove into trying to solve that problem. And what we did is we kind of did two key things with our technology. The first part was batteries themselves kind of work like Christmas lights. You have them in a string, if you will. And when one bulb goes out, they all go out. So there's kind of a leader follower sort of thing. And they use what's called a little binary dip switch for addressing. So if you wanted to say you have a big array like you'd have for a grid, you'd have 50,000 battery packs maybe in that array, and you manually number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that with this binary switch. Well, that's one of the things that's quite tricky about dealing with setting things up without a technician or an electrician or an engineer, is that these numbers are always set by specialized technicians. So the first thing we did is we actually took that process and that piece of technology and wrapped it into PCB boards themselves. So we made the batteries intelligent. So if we had 50,000 battery packs connected together, you turn on the switch, they will automatically all number themselves, and they will assign a leader and all followers. If communication for some reason should stop to the leader, a new leader is automatically assigned and new followers are assigned. So it's all reacts very quickly. In fact, faster than communication can go back to a controller. So it's effectively instantaneous. So that's one of the key things that allows us to do things like replace diesel generators, because you don't need the electricians and technicians to get involved to set it up. The other piece that was really quite unique, and actually, I'm totally going to brag for a second here, but I actually got to be a guest expert on a NASA podcast this summer talking about this. But we actually have arguably the most advanced security in a battery system in the world. And effectively what we did is we took, sorry, I should preface, battery packs themselves don't actually have security. So if you have any kind of battery system, renewable system, it's typically connected to the grid, which makes it vulnerable to attacks. And if you can get an IP address, you can pretty much take them down. There's very little. Some basic firewalls is usually about it. The packs themselves don't actually have security. We thought, well, that seems like a kind of big breath. So we set out, and what we did is most computers still use 128-bit encryption. We did 256-bit, so just kind of next level up. And then we tied it to this leader follower thing. So if you were to try and hack our system, and you say you've successfully hacked the 256-bit encryption on one pack, it would instantaneously isolate that pack from the rest of the array and assign a new leader, which means the only way you could actually take down one of our systems would be to simultaneously hack every single pack in the array. Well, there's no known technology today that actually can beat that. So like even quantum computing right now, we don't have the ability. So nothing's ever truly unhackable because technology is always changing. But the potential of hacking our stuff is near zero. So those are kind of the two key pieces of our technology that really are unique.
And when NASA calls, like I think that's the best guest appearance I've heard of. That's amazing.
You know what? They actually told me afterwards it was their best received podcast they had done of the season. So they nominated me to the White House speaker list. So we'll see if I ever get called, but pretty big honor. So
amazing. Amazing. And I also have heard that you were selected as a finalist for the 2024 AS Tech Awards. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get into your pitch story. What motivated you to apply for the pitch?
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about back when you reached out about doing this today, and I realized at the time we really were looking for any way to make ourselves known, looking for any type of opportunity to get funding, etc. And a friend reached out and sent me a link and said, "Hey, have you heard about this? It's really out there to support women and diverse business owners. Maybe you should check it out." And so I did. I checked it out and I said, "Wow, this is a great program. Seems like a great idea." And I wasn't sure what my chances were, but I thought, well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So
exactly.
I threw in an application and kind of made my way through the series of stages, I guess.
Amazing. So, and what stage was the business at when you applied?
Oh, that's a hard thing to describe. I mean, by definition, I'd still say very much startup. We did have a commercial product that was out. We had some smaller solar generators we did first. That was our first product. So we did have a commercialized product out, but the really key part of our technology was still in development. So I'd stayed still very much in startup space.
And so what was your experience like in actually applying for the program? So you said you sort of walked, there's all these stages. How did you go about and approach it?
It honestly, I felt like we were informed so well through the process. It was really quite straightforward. I didn't have to put a lot of thought into how am I going to do this. We would be contacted. This is the information we require. This is what you'll do. Here's your next steps. And each time we passed one stage, there was another bit of information to say, well, this is what's going to happen next. Here's who's going to contact you. These are the type of questions that we're going to need you to be able to answer. And, and then I think by what stage was it? At some point, I got a mentor assigned, who was fantastic, by the way. And I get to spend time with that person just talking about the business and what makes for a successful pitch and all of those kinds of things. And again, past that, practice with the mentor, next step, and eventually I found myself in the finals.
Amazing. Had you done any pitching before coming into, or had you actually pitched for capital or done?
Yeah, a little bit. It was mostly contests. So I'd done just before that, in Ventures, one of the tech conferences in Canada had a Building Smarter Cities pitch competition, which I won. The competition, though, wasn't nearly as big, I don't think, as the forum's pitch contest. So I've done some. A lot of times I found that having something that's really deep tech, if the pitch was only like 60 seconds, it was really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard for me because people would be like, "What's your differentiator?" And I'm like, "Do you really think I can cram what I just told you into 60? There's no way." Right?
What do you know about batteries?
Yeah, exactly. And if I said, well, I manufacture batteries, that's not enough information. Yeah. So I really found the short ones hard. It was nice when I could find something a little bit longer in that 3 to 6 minute sort of length, which is where, the forum sat really nicely because there was enough time to explain what I do with a reasonable amount of detail and still talk about the business itself. So both tech and business description. So yeah.
Interesting. And for those watching the webinar, we do have the forum pitch is a 3-minute long pitch, which is long for an elevator pitch. The application process does have a 60-second pitch when you apply. However, you have the opportunity in your application to elaborate, provide that background stuff for anyone who's now thinking, oh gosh, how do I fit that into 60 seconds. So what are some of the key takeaways that you gained from participating in the program, your time with your mentor or going through the process?
There were so many things. I mean, in a lot of ways, one of the most impactful things for me was the intangible part, the word of mouth, the number of people that saw us. Like, I'm not going to lie, the cash was a lifesaver. I mean, we were desperately short on cash. So winning it had a huge impact for us in terms of the immediate, here's a check to keep the doors open. But also just, it helped spread the word. So I went on probably in the next 18 months after that to win a number of other tech awards in particular. So we won, well, eventually we won it, but at the time, in the first 12 months, we were named a finalist for international mining competition for alternative energy. We went on to win the National Product Innovation Award for the Cannies, so the entrepreneurship awards, and a whole pile. So a lot of it really kind of just went bang, 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 bang really quickly after the forum, because a lot of people reached out and said, hey, I saw what you're doing. That's so cool. We were able to actually secure a couple of angels to do some debt financing, well, convertible debt financing to kind of help us keep the doors open, moving things ahead. So all of it was really kind of, it helped us step forward and at a really crucial time. I mean, that was for us in COVID, and we were lucky to keep the doors open. We'd had a really big project lined up. I'll leave the business out, but the business ended up being used instead for a COVID testing site. So where we were going to be doing this project got completely shut down.
The things that you could not anticipate in a million years, right?
Yeah, never.
Yeah, what a time. And for the audience, for anyone who's brand new to raising capital, Connie mentioned angel investors. And so for anyone who hasn't heard of what an angel investor is, these are typically early stage investors, individual investors who will support at the early stages of a company. Often they are entrepreneurs themselves, and so on. So they fill a critical capital stage before you get to, say, bigger venture capital firms and so on. And certainly as part of the pitch program, access to those kind of folks is, I think, a key value of the program as well.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, that honestly, the people who are angels who are involved in the program, who follow the work that the forum does, I think are already past that initial unconscious bias. You know, when we started out, and I'll be frank, I even today still have people who will make comments like, yeah, but who really invented it? You know, or, you know, where's the guy in charge? And so we still get a lot of those things. And with the angels I met through the forum, they were already kind of past that unconscious bias that a person of a diverse background is going to be just as competitive. So it was really, really helpful because it helped us get to a really important market, not just our important audience, I should say, not just a general audience of angel investors, but specifically ones who were interested in helping diverse-owned businesses.
That's great to hear. And I think it's, I'm a tech entrepreneur myself, and we could probably spend hours talking about some of the things that I faced as well. In fact, exactly the same. You just need a guy who knows, you just need to get a guy who's done this before. And I think as the forum, this is a big thing that the forum's been able to do over these 22 years, is really bridge those gaps and generate, massive support for the community, and just by raising the profile of women entrepreneurs, venture capitalists who may have had an unconscious bias are beginning to see that a successful entrepreneur can look like all of us.
Yeah, it's I wish there was no longer a need for the good work. The forum still have a gap to bridge, and it is something that I certainly, when I started out, I didn't expect as much challenge as I had. I thought we would get more support, and I incorporated in 2014, and even at that point, I mean, batteries, weren't the hot topic. Tesla was still pretty new. But as things gained and more was said about, the importance of batteries and renewables and what an important and key role they play, and how Canada needs to be manufacturing more of these. We have a tiny fraction of the world's battery supply chain, and I do mean tiny, less than 1%. I think it's less than 0.5% actually. It's astronomically low, but yet we we couldn't get support. And I kept running into similar kind of problems, especially in the early stages. Had my sales guy in the meet and says, well, I'll talk to someone more technical, right? I've been in tech for 20 years. It was incredibly frustrating. And I mean, like you can imagine all of the vocabulary that goes with it.
I can imagine.
But,
yeah. So one of the things that we have added to the pitch program, since you did the program, is we actually have 2 days of free virtual education on getting funding ready, to all applicants actually get to go through, which I think is, as you talk about this and the things we face and the way, learning about who to reach out to, how, and the way to tell your story and the way to come forward with that confidence that you obviously, have and have built out, I think is good. And so for anyone watching, I think that's a huge value to the program.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be. I learned a lot of that after. One of the groups had reached out was Fort Capital Partners, who is a VC firm, or investment bank, I should say. And they actually, really supported. There was no cost to me. They just were really supportive, and they taught me a lot that I would imagine now are things that you're including in what the pitch participants are getting to learn. And that's something that's really crucial. I mean, if you're going to do a raise at some point, it's things that you have to learn.
Yeah. Even things like the right terminology, I think opens doors. I remember going into the early capital related meetings, and just, they had the sort of insecurity that comes from just not really knowing, are you saying the right things? How do you even talk about capital? And so, some of the things that pitch education now does is explores those different types of funding options. So as I said, the angels, the venture capitals, debt capital, and so on. Talks about your fundraising strategy, which is always something you actually, I'm sure you've found as well. The fundraising strategy needs to actually start at the very beginning. If you're going to be a capital intensive business, knowing how even to structure your business, when to take capital, this is key lessons that sounds like you were lucky enough to find out of that network. And now we're realizing that from folks like yourself and bringing it in earlier.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, honestly, when I started, I had no idea just how capital intensive it was going to be. And there's definitely things that I've learned that I would have structured the business definitely differently than I have. And learning it earlier, I probably would have made changes sooner. It definitely made it challenging as we were the more I learned, the more I realized, I have to change this, and now I have to change that. And I need to learn all of the, like you said, the vocabulary around like financial terms. I mean, I'm very tech heavy person, and while I can sell very well, that's not the same as being a CFO. So being able to speak the right language, understand what it was they were looking for was really, really crucial. And actually, for anybody gets a chance, there's a great TED Talk by Dana Cans, I think it is. And she talks about unconscious bias in VC funding. And at the end, she actually gives a few tips about how you can use some strategies in how you respond to questions to kind of overcome some of those unconscious biases. Definitely worth checking out.
Interesting. That sounds good, team. Maybe we can see if we can find a link to that and throw it in the chat. So, what challenges did you face in trying to access the financial capital that you needed?
That could be a long conversation. A lot of it kind of ended up things that kind of became additive. A challenge in one area could make another area a challenge. So we have a lot of people who frankly just didn't think we could do it. I mean, and really, not many people will actually go and start something like a deep tech manufacturing company. So I was already very much kind of on my own. There's not a lot of people who are doing technology manufacturing in Canada, much less women. And it really kind of spiraled, because at first, when I didn't get support, I used debt. I put in money off my homeowner's line of credit and all of that. So the company had debt, and we couldn't get any investments. So then we got more debt, and then we got more debt. And then debt doesn't look as good, which I think is actually a little bit of a misnomer, if you will, because equity investment is still a type of debt. It's just a debt you can't pay off. So it's really important when you look at how you're going to finance your business, what is the right type of finance for the right stage of your business. If you give up equity too early, well, you give up, a great deal of value in the long term. So it's kind of finding the sweet spot for us. When I first started to look and consider equity investments, there was just no interest whatsoever. And then we kind of had a little bit of shift where, having success on the forums pitch contest, and then kind of a few successive things afterwards, we ended up being offered a low interest debt option. So we went with that instead, which allowed us to grow the business without giving up equity, which really has, I think, in the long run, been a great opportunity for me. One of my biggest concerns was if I gave up equity early, especially if I gave up a majority at some point, that they were just going to look at me and say, well, women don't know how to manufacture batteries. Let's get a new CEO. Let's get a new CTO. Here's a few dollars, be on your way. So that was a real concern for me, especially with how I'd been treated up to that point. So the debt for us helped us bridge an important gap so that we could continue to grow the business. While we were trying to get, let's say, ourselves prepared such that we were attractive to the VCs who could take us to the next stage.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. It's a long and not easy journey. And I want to I'm just watching the chat and seeing, somebody in the audience just talking about, hearing Connie and I talk about tech companies, which are obviously capital intensive and most often on some kind of venture capital type of path. And the question is, is the pitch program just for those kind of businesses? And you will have seen from Connie from the other businesses that pitched year. But just to kind of address that for everyone, the forum pitch is actually known for the breadth of types of companies that do participate. And really it's a program for companies that are looking at ways to access capital, that are looking at building businesses that they can scale, and that can be absolutely anything. And what I would recommend for anyone looking at types of businesses is even to go back and look at the pitches done in previous years. So this past year, we had one tech company, we had two garment companies. Smart Sweets, for anyone who has nibbles at Smart Sweets, the healthy candies in the grocery store lineup that you see everywhere, they were a pitch winner back in, I think, 2017. So it's all over the map.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, one of the finalists the year I was in was Bloom, who has wonderful teas and beverages, and I'm not sure what she's expanded to since then, but I certainly see them in the stores.
I know. Yeah. She's expanded to Super Belly, which is I am currently completely addicted to.
I remember having to go
another conversation. Check it out.
Exactly.
Okay, so what advice? So, thinking about the founders, the entrepreneurs that we likely have on this call right now, and we know that folks will be coming in to pitch from different stages, different industries. What kind of advice or encouragement would you give to folks watching this who are considering applying?
Yeah, well, first off, you lose nothing by trying. You always gain experience. So even if you're not sure if you're ready, the feedback you'll get, the practice of having to think through the process of writing it out or explaining your business to someone is good practice. So no matter where you are, stage-wise, I think it's a good thing to do. In terms of really more specific advice, I think the advice that I got and the mentorship through programs like the Forum, where it had more of a diverse lens, was probably the most useful for me, because they were able to recognize some of the things that were unique challenges for me. So take that advice and listen closely, but most importantly, trust your gut. When you hear all of that advice, and advice comes from absolutely everywhere, take it all in, process it, have an open mind, but trust that you know your business. I think one of the few things I can say, the few things that I've regretted along my path have been when I ignored my own instincts and thought, no, this person knows more than me. Trust in yourself. You know your product, and maybe the first time you try and pitch it, you're not getting it across, but that just means you have more to learn, and that's okay. So I would really say listen to everybody, but don't hesitate to believe in yourself and know that you know your business best.
That's really great advice. And you're the second entrepreneur I've had a chat with in the last few months that has given that same piece of advice. And I think it is that balance of, there's so many great advisors and folks that, through the Forum you're going to get access to, but some of the challenges, how you filter all that information and make it work for you. Thank you for that. So one last question before we get into the details, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, you're on the other side now, and I love asking this of entrepreneurs that are kind of at the next stage. What's something that would support you more effectively at this stage of your entrepreneurial journey?
This is rather specific, and maybe we should have learned it earlier, but I definitely the financial support, like a really knowledgeable fractional CFO would have been helpful to us earlier, and is certainly, now that we've engaged one, making an enormous difference, both in how we tell the story of our business when you look at our financials, but also my understanding of our business. Like, oh, wow, okay, now that I look at these numbers and I understand what they really mean, gee, we really need to look at what we're doing in this particular area. So for me, one of the big things I would say that we've recently done, and would, I think, for businesses in this stage, is getting either a full-time CFO or a fractional CFO who really has that in-depth knowledge. So, not maybe just your basic accountant, but somebody who's, been there and done it, knows what it looks like on the other side.
Awesome advice. And for participants, we do have a program called Business Finance Essentials that gives you some of that financial background. But I think I'll echo that, Connie. And I think, our accountants will know how to do the books. What they won't know how to communicate to us as founders is the critical metrics that help us to measure our own business success, see if as we grow and scale, we're going in the right direction. And then I think when you're going out to raise capital, understanding that what we as founders see as success is not actually the same thing that a capital provider will be looking for. And that you don't need a ton of hours of a fractional CFO, but somebody that can give you that sense so you can be measuring and understanding and knowing how to talk about it, not being scared. It can be really the intimidating stuff.
Absolutely.
And none of it is, it's not rocket science. It just takes learning and practice. And
yeah, I remember when I first started, somebody said accounting was a math problem, but finance was art. And I was like, it's all math. I was wrong. I was very much wrong. Yeah. There is very much an art to finance, and it's important to learn it.
That is a really, really good. Yeah. And most CFOs are not, they don't like to do the numbers. They don't, they're not in the numbers, they're in the storytelling around what you can read out of those numbers. Yeah, that's good. All right, well, thank you so much. I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I have to go, and we need to talk more about this program now. Really appreciate you joining us today and offering your time and energy and your wisdom capital to those of us on the call, and also thank you for all the other support that you've been offering the forum, sharing your story. I think one of the greatest assets of a community like the forum is learning from each other.
Absolutely, and it's my pleasure.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, so I am going to jump into some of the key details of the pitch program. First off, who's it for? So the Odlum Brown Forum Pitch Program is for any self-identifying woman, non-binary, or trans femme entrepreneur who's planning to raise funds now or in the next 12 months. There's so many amazing reasons to apply. If you're feeling unsure that maybe your business isn't ready, as Connie said, go for it. Even if you're feeling like you may not be ready to get on a stage, applying and participating in the forum pitch education, as I think Connie and I both shared from our own business experience, just getting an understanding of how this world of fundraising works can be so valuable. And you can see the dates on the screen. That pitch education will take place on the 6th and the 13th of November. So in terms of our process, after we've reviewed each and every single application, our semi-finalists will be announced on December the 5th. And we select 10 semi-finalists. And so for those who are selected as a semi-finalist, you'll be paired with a mentor to help you prepare to deliver a 3-minute pitch live and in person at our Odlum Brown Forum Pitch semi-final events in February. We also this year have added a virtual mock pitch in mid-January for semi-finalists to practice a pitch and get feedback from an expert. And the work that you're doing as you prepare that pitch, pitching is part the art of getting up and storytelling, and part the art of finding the story in your business. And as Connie and I were just talking about, some of that is how you tell the financial story in a way that might be compelling to somebody who is going to come on board with some investment. It's part vision, it's part financial picture, and part selling yourself in the business. So as semi-finalists, you actually participate in both of the semi-final showcases. The forum does fund your travel to both Toronto on February 13th and to Vancouver on February 20th. And at those events, we see at least a couple of hundred people at those events. The audience is made up of a super supportive community, and gives you the potential opportunity to meet future investors, mentors, collaborators, and more. And the energy of that event, whether you are a semi-finalist or you are in Vancouver or Toronto and want to attend to see other businesses, it's a phenomenal event. So at the end of the second of those semifinals in Vancouver, 3 finalists are selected and announced. And all 3 of those selected as semi-finalists receive a prize package valued at 30,000 Canadian each, including 10,000 cash. And those prizes are given at the Odlum Brown Forum Pitch finale on April 25th, 2025, where the finalists will have the opportunity to pitch for a final time in front of our audience. of around 800 folks that are just a larger section of supporters. As Connie said in her experience, it's a room full of people that are many long-term forum supporters. They're there knowing that great work is coming out of the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem, and they're there to provide their support. At the event, there's an audience vote for one of the finalists, and that audience, the winner of the audience vote, receives an additional $20,000 in cash, thanks to a capital sponsor, Wheaton Precious Metals. So for more details on the benefits of the program, you can go to our pitch program website, which is theforumpitch.ca, and Millie's Way will add that into the chat. So as you can tell, I'm a big fan of this program, and so let me tell you how you can apply. Okay, and I do see that there are some questions in the chat, and I will pop to those in just a minute when after we go through the application process. So application is completely free. The application steps, and we'll add these to the chat as well. So step one, you fill in your application form. Before you do so, please review the eligibility requirements as well as the program terms and conditions. You're then going to create your 60-second video. And I know one of the questions we have in the chat is, do I need a fancy video camera? Absolutely not. A pitch filmed on your laptop or your phone is absolutely fine. One thing I will say is your 60-second video needs to be 60 seconds. We will only watch up to the 60-second mark. So really think through the script and so on before you create your video. It needs to succinctly explain what your business does, tell us what amount of funding you're seeking and why. We're not looking at your filming skills. It doesn't have to be perfect in execution. Focus your attention on that messaging. We want to feel the passion for your business and hear your story. So once you're done your video, make the video unlisted on YouTube to keep it from being viewed publicly. And that way only you and those with the link, us, will be able to watch it. Step 3, you'll complete the application form before 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time on October 24th, 2024. And just noting time zones, so make sure you've got those time zones noted, depending on where you're coming from. Once you've created the video entry, complete the application form. Again, link to your unlisted video on YouTube and submit by October 24th. Okay, let's just see what we have in open questions. If I have multiple business ideas, can I submit an entry for each of them? So what we're asking is that you please submit just one business and that it is operational. So this isn't a, the program is open to, early stage businesses right on up, but it does need to be a business that you have established, even if it's early startup. In terms of, the stage of business, for the full program, you can be as early as pre-launch. So you can just be working through the plan and getting ready to launch to your audience. If you're in the ideation stage, just thinking about it, you can attend the education sessions, or you can check out one of our other programs like E-Series. But if you're actually going to, when we look at who will be selected as semifinalists, we are looking for businesses that are launched to the stage that you're ready to raise capital in the the next 12 months. Okay, can I submit my video in a language other than English? We do ask that you submit your video in English, please. Is there a pitch to qualify for the semifinals? No, the semifinals are selected based on your application form and the 60-second video that you submit. Are there any specific industries that do not qualify? Do service providing businesses have the opportunity to participate? Yes, absolutely. Any kind of business is welcome to apply, as long as you are building a business where you think that some external capital will be important for you. And I'll just leave it. I think that's the end of our open questions. I'll give a call for if there are any additional questions. Okay, I think how do you evaluate between revenue versus pre-revenue companies? So we're not looking at companies based on their revenue. We're looking at, when we look at selecting our semifinalists and finalists, they are actually selected by a community panel that's made up of folks that work in venture capital. So, and across businesses are funded at all stages of growth, some pre-revenue, some, later stage businesses that are highly profitable, all raise capital. So when venture capitalists look at it, they're looking at what is the fundability of the company based on the stage they're at, which is what is the, how good is the story you're telling? Is it a business that makes sense for someone to invest in? And what could the end results of that investment be? Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Okay, sorry, one more question has just popped in. Are there return expectations for the venture capital raise, or is this negotiated later? So in the forum pitch competition program, if this is different than, say, Dragon's Den, the folks that are, so we are not awarding capital other than the prize money. We're not awarding capital at the end of the program. This is an opportunity for you to present your pitch, and there will be folks in the audience from a range of different types of capital providers, and you would, if somebody's interested, they would contact you. You would have the opportunity to meet with them and explore the different venues for capital. However, in general, if you're going to raise venture capital, venture capital firms, that's how they make their money. That's how they do business, is they're looking for a return, and the levels of return vary. And that's something that we'll talk more about in the pitch education. There are other types of capital that you may, that don't require a specific return, such as, we're going to 10 times your money. There's debt capital that you may access that is just looking for a payback and some interest. There's all kinds of different options. But for the pitch program itself, that's something that you would, this is just giving you access to potential capital providers. Okay, last call. Okay. If there are any questions, and I can imagine that this may percolate, and so if questions come up after we end the webinar, please reach out to our pitch program manager, Nalizwe, by email. Her information's on the screen. And again, remember, just by applying, you get the opportunity not only to practice pitching your business vision to others, but gain access to the community of potential investors, mentors, and collaborators, as well as access to the pitch education. So we are really looking forward to seeing your applications, getting to know your businesses, and over the next, as you submit your applications over the next few weeks, you can keep up with any updates on the program, or share your journey with us on social media at the Forum CA. And before I wrap up, I just want to point out that, of course, the Odlum Brown Forum pitch wouldn't be possible without our supporters. So as I close, I'd like to say a huge, huge thank you again to our returning title sponsor, Odlum Brown. They have been supporting the forum, not just in this program, but in many programs since day one of the forum, and their commitment to our community has been unbelievable and unstoppable. Thanks also to our capital sponsor, Wheaton Precious Metals. And thank you all for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing your applications and meeting you at various forum things as you grow your business. Thanks so much.